Hello everybody and welcome to Music Real Talk with Marbin. If you like what you're hearing, please subscribe.
No, I'm doing the groove.
I'm Indian. I'm doing the Indian solfege.
Are you doing the
what?
melodic rhythmical style of Indian people in the 15th century? I don't know. I don't know when they came up.
I may or may not have appropriated something.
I don't know when we came up with it.
Anyway, this is episode 5 of the Music Real Talk with Marbin podcast. A lot of exciting stuff is happening this week.
Well, I told the guy we're gonna talk about the history of jazz.
The history of jazz?
Yeah, he wanted us to. This guy asked us to do a podcast about it.
Oh, that's what we're doing? All right, let's do that.
You want to do it as the next one, or?
No, let's do it. Fuck it.
Okay.
The beginning.
Go ahead. No.
You just kind of sprung that on me.
Oh, no. But, so, he wanted to talk about, the guy asked us about how jazz developed basically from style to style. So, to start it, as a premise, I would say that we have 3 main things that we look at in music, which is the rhythm that people play, the harmonic language that people use, and
the timbre. The sound color.
Yeah. So for us, we're gonna start jazz with, it's gonna be obviously a guitar saxophone heavy way to look at jazz, but we're gonna start jazz with people like Louis Armstrong and Sidney Bechet and people like that.
Well, the truth is, there was a generation before them, but they were barely recorded, like King Oliver, and this music kind of emerged out of Dixieland and really early swing bands.
Well, it's tough to tell when this is jazz, this is not jazz, this is jazz, This is not jazz. So it's especially when something just gets created, right? So if you notice the first people that played jazz, again, like Sidney Bechet, Louis Armstrong, even the swing people, right? So Lester Young, it's the next generation, or just a little bit.
Just a little bit after.
Duke Ellington. Yeah, Duke Ellington, Johnny Hodges. So all those guys, they thought about harmony basically as chord tones, and then kind of approach notes, enclosures. Do you want to explain what it is, Danny? Or?
Yeah, so I think the idea was that if you were to look at a song, any song you play, you realize that it's made up of chords. For those of you who don't understand that, it might be hard to follow. But, melody lines, like a single note, like the way a trumpet would play, blah, ba, da, ba, 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 is supported by a piano who might play 3 or 4 notes, just kind of. And that's, those chords moving from one another are the harmonic structures. And to make chords, you need to find vertical structures, meaning chords, notes played at the same time that sound good together. And the early people took a look at the harmony and really found a way of arpeggiating it, just meaning playing them as lines, and then touch the notes that are around each unit that makes up those harmonic structure. And that was the basis for their note choices.
Yeah, well, it started as, you take a melody and then you alter it a little bit, and then they learned that if you look at the chords, you can just make up melodies basically on the spot.
Right. You have a palette of color from moment to moment that works in separate, in every moment of the song. Let's say you're playing an A7. So you ask yourself, okay, A7 is a code name for what's inside the chord. A7 is basically a recipe to make it. So if you have an A, a C sharp, an E, and a G, that's an A7. So that's really arpeggiating. That's just playing, or in other words, chord tone approach. You hear people playing that. Or on guitar, they say, play the shapes. Those are the shapes. It's just understanding that in the moment, let's say your melody note is a C sharp, but the chord is an A7, then these guys knew, okay, I have 4 notes that are going to work right now. And then I also have ways of maneuvering around these 4 notes, so I can do things like approach notes. So if I have ba, 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 so that's kind of like a dominant chord, do, do, ba, go, go, do, do. don't know if I sang whatever. You can kind of go a half step below each one of these notes, or you can do like enclosures, like they do in gypsy jazz, which is both sides of the notes. Right? So that's the idea.
Yeah, and we learn how to play, like, again, we look at the chord tone, and we're like, oh, the 9 works where 9 is like, the note above the root. So that's how we started. And the harmonic knowledge was limited compared to what came just a few years later. And also the rhythmical vocabulary was very limited, because technically, when you look at stuff more like as chord tones and the chord note approach, you on horns you really are limited technically, because horns you can play more in like lines that go in seconds. Again, if you're not a musician, I'm not sure how much it tells you, but
in
like
small steps,
like da 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 da.
Yeah, like
da,
scalar motion, the stuff you would hum or sing, but arpeggios have bigger
da
intervals.
da 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 da.
So within 2.5 octaves, you're done with your horn. So that's only like 8 or 9 notes.
So they played short solos, pretty slow. Didn't have a lot of rhythmical vocabulary, because it was pretty limited, because they can't really play faster subdivisions. But what we really did was play crazy amount of like vibrato and articulation, and play with the sound. And there is a recording of there's a famous recording of Louis Armstrong singing Confessing, but then there is a recording of Dizzy Gillespie singing Confessing, and Dizzy Gillespie kind of doing like a Louis Armstrong impression.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of parodying Louis Armstrong, but in that, like he loved Louis Armstrong, but it's kind of like also making fun of him, like of somebody you love. But you can see that the way he makes fun of him is like he's doing all these extreme things to his sound.
Right, extreme coloration, extreme articulation. That's really what these early guys did. And I just want to interject that, like, when you're talking about the rhythms these people played, it's not like they played non-complicated rhythms. They played rhythms that are floatier because they were doing things to sound. So they were addressing the subdivisions less clearly most of the time. When you're looking at a guy like Charlie Parker or Coltrane or later guys, they're always subdividing the beat. It's more like, like you do in Indian music or in later kinds of music. Everything is really metric. In the sense, not everything, but most of the time. And playing those smaller intervals and close together notes that are kind of easier to maneuver on the instrument really lets you do that. Play a lot of, if you have a beat, same song, bum, da da ba 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 ba, and this is like your tempo, like 1, 2, 3, 4. A guy like Charlie Parker might play a lot of like ba da do ba ba ba. Right? So rhythms like that are really, what did I do? 16th notes, right? 6 doublets, and a guy like Louis Armstrong is going to float over the time, meaning like he's going to make statements that are kind of smeared and hard to write down, more like the way you would speak. Like it has a speaking quality or a singing quality to where it's like ba 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 ba.
Yeah, I'd say this is right, but they're still really playing in the groove, like they push and pull the rhythm.
Right.
But it's still based around like the subdivisions that are in the groove of the songs.
Absolutely it is, but it just this kind of playing which is articulation centric will lead you towards different kind of rhythmic choices that are less dense, less subdivided.
Yeah, because you have to have the time. It's like if you listen even to modern music and you want to, I don't know, when we started recording and we ask you, okay, what guitar sound you like for reference, you'll be like Jeff Beck, right? But you play most notes in one solo and he played his entire career.
Right.
So it's like it doesn't work the same way.
And also if you listen subtly to what Louis Armstrong is doing, like the wavelengths of the vibrato are super in time and super
Yeah.
fast. So to make stuff interesting, you always need to have a lot of rhythm in your playing, and it's just a question of where you put it. You can put the rhythm, you can put that 16th note rhythm by playing da 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 da, or you can go ba and make those 16th notes really in time. And a lot of the way that these people make fast gestures are inside their coloring, which is interesting.
Yeah. So the thing that happened kind of simultaneously in Europe with gypsy jazz is that they played basically swing, but because it was on guitar, it was perfect technically. So
Right.
actually,
Because you can play those thirds kind of, all those chord note kind of things, enclosures, thirds, unlike horns, the guitar really lends itself to use that kind of thing and play fast rhythm, right? So you can, that's not a problem on the guitar, right? Playing like a quick minor arpeggio, sweeping it up and, up the guitar is really technically, I wouldn't say easy, but possible. And
yeah.
it created this thing where accordions, pianos, guitars really started shredding swing. And that's really why a lot of the appeal of gypsy jazz too is that like they called it hot jazz, right? And the things that started heating up in the States weren't really swing. It was the later kind of music, which is bebop.
Yeah, so the gypsy jazz really has the same like dissonance level as swing, and
Dissonance level, meaning the kinds of harmonies that they're using, shies away from 7 chords on minor and major chords and has 6 chords. Now, if you're not, musically inclined, it just means that you put different information inside your harmonies, and it also changes the way your melodic choices sound. So on a minor chord in bebop, you would use minor 7 mostly, which is 1 flat 3 5 flat 7, and in gypsy jazz you'd use a minor 6, which is the same thing just with a 6 instead of a 7. So if you have an A minor, the question is whether you're going to use a G or an F sharp as the 7th. And 6 chords sound a little bit more consonant, a little more inside, a little more like maybe classical music, Eastern European music,
and again,
tango.
the lines are really like chord tone oriented.
Right. And it makes a big difference. It might seem like a small detail, but that's one of the bigger differences harmonically in what happened, other than, extended harmonies and lots of 2/5s. Maybe this is not a podcast for everybody. We're using a lot of inside talk, but follow if you can. So when you get into bebop, when you get into Charlie Parker, maybe remember that the big difference between this and early gypsy jazz for sure is really the use of major 7 chords and minor 7 chords as opposed to 6/9 chords for major and minor 6
Well,
chords.
and the lines, so it's more dissonance music. So now you can't really play chord tones like you did
Yeah, it
in
sounds
swing.
funny.
It sounds weird. So like you don't really land on them or solve to them as much as you did, really, because it just doesn't sound right anymore. So
And you don't. I think the if I were to say the biggest difference in terms of the melodic choices is that your line information, once you're not anchoring your lines to the arpeggio, but you start anchoring your lines either to the substitution, some sort of substitution, or to the scale
Yeah,
or
it's
to
really
the
the scale.
mode,
Yeah.
then you would just instinctively come up with different kinds of lines, a lot more chromatic enclosures. And the idea is just basically where you're aiming at. Meaning, if you're aiming towards the root, or the minor third on a minor chord, all of your thinking kind of wraps around these points. That it doesn't really matter where you land. What matters is like the way you maneuver makes it consonant in a very specific way. Once you're starting to aim to tensions, to the 9, to the 11, to the 13th, you start getting different kinds of lines, and that's really what you start to see with Charlie Parker.
Yeah. And what it did, though, it freed them up because they could use a harmonic language which is a little bit more dissonant, and they had more knowledge of what works over what chord, which they started thinking in scales and modes instead of in chords. They could play like way faster on horns and faster subdivisions and way more complex rhythmically, and higher, faster tempos. And longer solos that have more stuff in them. Still kind of short solos, but longer than before.
Another couple of stylistic differences that started happening was basically how the rhythm section was playing. So it really, you lost the 5-string banjo and that kind of like Count Basie type of like 4 on the floor guitar, and gypsy jazz has something playing quarter notes that's also giving you all the chord information all the time, which reinforces this consonance on the music. Now the drums and bass are really holding the time. The bass is playing almost all the time walking, and it's not really that halftime bass that you hear in gypsy jazz. Like
but it's not like 1-5-1-5. So that already makes it like the dissonance level much different.
And actually, I was when I was doing the Music Real Talk thing, I was talking to a gypsy jazz bassist, and he was saying how in Django's music, something that you don't really take into account is that when they're walking, since they all come from classical music and they have zero blues and they're playing, they don't have this kind of chromatic walking bass. They have a very diatonic walking bass. Ba 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 ba. It's like it's strangely consonant if you compare it to like American bebop, which is really half steppy. Do be do bo 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 bo. So the bass motions, the melodies in the bass, all those offbeats, all those 2s and 4s, kind of land in really dissonant places, flat 9s, flat 6s, flat 5s. So we have this layer of more dissonant lines in the bottom of the music that really frees up the top to be a little more dissonant too. And then you have drums that are all of a sudden slightly interacting with the solo, and really they're not building yet. And that's really where bebop and what came later.
So it's important to understand that every style is in a lot of ways an answer to what was before, right? Because it's
or
like
even a rebellion.
Yeah, rebellion. Yeah, but so it's like a good musician sees what's around him and is sick of it, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna do something else. Everything I don't like about this one, I'm gonna take it to the extreme on the other hand. So it's like bebop already became well less communicative. It was all about the playing, all about like
tempo's not danceable.
Yeah, like being virtuosic and just, like that's where Burning really started. Yeah, no singing. That's where it really started.
Right.
And so the next style of jazz from bebop, there was a very quick transition to what's called hardbop. So hardbop was basically the answer to bebop already.
It was the ring.
One thing. So we talked about the harmony and about the rhythm. And as far as sound in bebop, you can still hear a little bit of vibrato and stuff, but again, the lines are so fast, there is no time for it.
Yeah, there's no
room.
So when you listen to Charlie Parker playing a ballad, it's very clear that he has deep roots in swing,
in what happened
and
just
that he
before,
loves people like that. He can do that, and he does do it, but not to that. When you compare his vibrato to somebody like Sidney Bechet, it's not a quarter as dramatic. That's not the point.
Johnny Hodges was around the same time playing with Duke Ellington.
Right. So these people really were trying to be expressive singers with big, lush vibratos, and I think
and glissandos and bands and all that. All that stuff.
The bebop people really kind of rejected that. They had that. It's weird to participate in some sort of like aesthetic disdain that's 100 years old, because but I'm guessing these people were probably pretty sick.
And again,
they thought it was corny.
Yeah, and again, there was just no time to do it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I do a lot of stuff, but also I'm very limited in the sense like I do it one every, like once or twice a song, some stuff.
Right.
Because just I play so many notes, there's just no time for all those things.
Yeah, and something that we talk about often, we probably did in the podcast before, is archetypes in music, and that's something that's important to keep in mind. So that initial archetype of the Louis Armstrong kind of musician was the archetype of the entertainer, right? And there was something that I heard Sonny Rollins talking about in an interview about Charlie Parker, and he was saying that they all had at that time had great disdain for that, and it was also, in their minds kind of a way for black people to kind of progress to stop being this like, smiling thing that's like, in a Hollywood movie singing to like, gorgeous people at like a dinner party, this thing, they wanted to take it deeper into art, away from entertainment, farther from Hollywood and deeper into some sort of like real thing. And Charlie Parker's archetype becomes not the entertainer, but the virtuoso, like the guy, like a lead violinist in a pit playing Paganini, right? That's the kind of vibe. Still suited up, still doing that, but just shredding in kind of a, respectable kind of way.
Yeah. So, yeah, they were thinking about like a lot of like the classical virtuosos.
Right.
Like that's what they were thinking basically. That we're doing the jazz version of that. After that, it came to Hardbop. So Hardbop was more about like taming the tempos a little bit, like playing really groovy, playing like in the groove, making like nice arrangements. Like you had bands coming along, like the Messengers.
Art Blakey's band.
Yeah, and then all the people that came out of it, and Hank Mobley and all those people. And it's really nice music to listen to, like to me in the background, like compared to bebop. Like, because bebop is really,
it's
really
all your
intense.
attention.
Yeah, it's really intense, and it's either great or it's unlistenable. Because it's like you really have to focus on the person. And if you don't like the person, it's like you don't like any of it.
I think also with Hardbop, came a different kind of composer, which really used harmony still to get to all these kind of places in instrumental music that were farther away than a pop song. Meaning a Charlie Parker kind of composition. I'm not talking about a bebop head, but like, the way that they would, write chords behind it was still it would be kind of like an extended version of a standard. They wouldn't fuck with the structure too much. So
they also played a lot of blues and rhythm changes. So Hardbop really took another step into more complex harmony.
And expanded harmonically, but still it was all supporting the same kinds of structures. They weren't really, if you look at composition and improvisation, a great metaphor for that would be the distinction between interior design and architecture. Meaning writing a song is like building a house. And improvising inside that song is like deciding where the couch goes. You can even maybe, move a wall in there. And that's really what they were doing with bebop, right? They took the swing houses and they were just breaking everything inside and like gutting it and refurbishing and like doing all this stuff, moving the walls, moving the windows, changing things, adding chords, but not really, breaking down the structures. With Hardbop, they really started, you look at like, Lee Morgan tunes and people like that. They put a lot of like unrelated 2/5s, a lot of extended sections, a lot of longer forms, and the melody kind of goes all over the place.
The arrangements are much more complex. Like we have great songs in Hardbop. Like they're really, like I think most of jazz standards come like
from that era.
I don't know if the most, but like the most jazz standards that are like
played now,
still considered hip.
And real book stuff, like a lot of real book stuff really is like people in Berkeley really love that era, the people that wrote the real book. That's really my problem is that the improvisers kind of play really inside rhythmically for the most part. That it became the challenge because the tunes got to this level of complexity.
Well, I think the music is kind of the focus and not the sole improviser in some sense, right? In the like, because you have to keep like a certain atmosphere in those songs.
Yeah, and then around the same time, you had people like Miles Davis venturing into like the West Coast kind of thing and the
like
cool jazz.
What's it called, third stream or something? That's like a combination between that and classical music. Cool jazz is a lot, to me, a lot of those people are just basically like the white version of that.
Yeah, but like, Kind of Blue, which is...
No, Kind of Blue is a little bit later.
Yeah, a little bit later, but same kind of era, like late 50s.
That's like 59?
59, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and...
so we did... Because Miles did Birth of Cool a few years before that, right? And it has like French horns and a lot of big arrangements and with stuff. But it's...
I would say that the similarity between hardbop and cool jazz to me is that focus on atmosphere, right? That's really this big picture mentality of jazz, of really starting to make albums. And around the same time too, you had Sinatra bringing out like, all of his... which I don't think people consider jazz for some reason, but that's just American pop of the time. But there was all of a sudden this kind of big arrangement idea where it was no longer, you in the big band era, in the swing bands, the idea was that you're painting the picture in your arrangement. And then you record the band, but it's in the arrangement. I think here the canvas already was the tape recording. They were really aware of the rooms, the miking, really making the sonic picture clear. And from there came Coltrane.
Yeah, and somebody in the middle to listen to is like Cannonball Adderley is kind of like he's still a bebop player, but he really plays. But he already
he's the bridge,
he's the bridge from
bebop,
a lot
of styles,
from bebop to hardbop basically, and then to a little bit of fusion, even R&B. Yeah. And then you had people after hardbop. You had now it starts to just venture into a lot of different directions at the same time.
It broke up into a few pieces. I would say one direction that's probably the most kind of synonymous with the era would be Coltrane. And Coltrane's music too, or playing, really changed a lot. He went from kind of being I think initially he tried to be a bebop player, and there's some recordings where it's, not so great. And then he, had the stuff with Monk and...
Yeah, we already with Monk, right? And he was young though. Well, I guess he wasn't that young though. He was like 30. But it was like his earlier recordings. And what Coltrane really did, it changed a lot for people, is that he played against the groove. Right? So if Hardbop was really playing in the groove all the time.
Let's sidestep and explain what that means real quick. So what does it mean to play in the groove and against the groove? Just like in harmony, where you can play against the harmony or inside the harmony, or out or in. With grooving, it works this way. If you have a pulse, let's say I'm playing swing, think about any song. Take the A train, right? Do, be, do, do, de, do. So the time is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the pulse. But the band is subdividing, meaning the band is drawing all the rhythmic information in between the beats from somewhere. And swing is triplet-driven music, right? So ba, be, ba, 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 ba. The motor under that is... So those things Danny are singing on like a pretend hi-hat are swung eighth notes. Those are triplets with the middle one missing. So instead of now Coltrane almost all the time plays straight eighth notes through everything,
eighth
like a
notes
bulldozer.
And 16th notes, and like if you hear like the people that play 16th notes before, they played it a lot of time like double time eighth notes. So they swung the 16th notes.
Right. So if I'm playing like that kind of thing, walking bass, and underneath it's implied that I'm feeling those triplets. And then Danny goes and plays ta 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 on top of it. That creates this tension, and that tension that's constant in Coltrane's playing. It's just bulldozing against the drums all the time. And you create this thing where you're always the focal point. You're ahead of the band. You're separate from it, and it's really intense. It's an intense rhythmic experience to listen to that.
When he had also advanced in the years in his career, he also started playing a lot of stuff that was like rhythmically more against the music, in a sense, like 5, dividing the beats to 5 and 7, just basically more like talking, right? He also has a famous song that he did,
like a lot of like
1, 2, 3,
right. So it sounds almost so complex that you stop associating it with metric divisions and you start thinking about it more like speech patterns.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because that's the way we talk. We don't talk like this right. Say that would sound like lame rapping or something. But that's his rhythmic approach, which really is the most critical thing in his sound. And I think people obsess over giant steps, which is a tiny bit later in his career, which is an approach.
Earlier. Oh, I guess
later than Monk.
Monk. Yeah.
Later than Monk, but earlier than the quartet stuff. And what happened with Giant Steps? He came up with a way of playing basically a cadence that takes a harmonic detour. So if you take a look at, like, let's say the first four chords of Giant Steps, it goes from a B to a D7 to a G major 7 to a B flat 7 to an E flat, and they're half of these, they're half, 2 beats each, I mean half a measure each, and then they resolve to an E flat. What that really is a 2-5-1 to E flat, but he's just using a strange way to get there, right? It's unrelated. And he wrote melodies that go inside these harmonies, and he really came up with a lot of vocabulary, and then he found it's basically a 2-measure way of getting to that major 7 chord. And it's hard. It's definitely a challenge if you've never done it before, and people took it way too far for too many years.
Well, he did it for a few records.
And then he gave it up,
Yeah.
It was just something he checked out, practiced, got good at, and then it was like, okay, it's not here.
It was like him exploring symmetry, basically.
Yeah, symmetry and harmony and creating this thing. Now, what does it do? That's really the question. And I think something people don't understand about writing and about composition is counterpoint, that the relationship between the bass and the melody. If you make the bass dissonant, you can make a melody that fits that dissonance. So you can make these melodies like Giant Steps sound inside if you create this twist in the bass. And there's something about also losing your sense of tonality that happens, especially if you're playing fast tempos with that many changes at the half measure, where you're creating something that's almost like a tone row, like a Schoenberg kind of feeling. There's no such thing as atonal music. This is something people don't understand, but the mind is not capable of not perceiving a tonality. But what it does is it gives up on trying. So when you're talking about atonal, what you really mean is polytonal. It means that the ear is not sure where the center is because you give it so many options that it just kind of accepts this dissonant melody that's happening as kind of centerless. But it's not really centerless. If you really look at it moment to moment and really try to understand where home is, you'll notice that you're always trying to triangulate it, but you always keep losing it. And when you have all these quick cadences that go between keys so fast, that's really what's happening. You're creating this weird atonal feeling. People use the word atonal all the time in music to describe this, but it's really quick polytonal. That's what's happening. Your ear is trying. It's like, oh, is this home? Is this home? Is this the cadence? Did we arrive? And by the time that you kind of zone in on where you are in the music, you're already in a new place.
But he still plays really inside the harmony.
Super inside.
Yeah.
People later on took.
We'll get to later on.
Yeah.
But he's so harmonically actually is not doing things that are that different, right? So, for him, it's like a lot in the rhythm and the sound, and really he brought a new archetype to jazz, which is the prophet archetype, right? With somebody that's super spiritual, and the music has like kind of a prayer or a spiritual thing to it that you go to a deep place.
Right.
It's not just it's not just a dude playing notes.
And that's really the post Giant Steps Coltrane.
Yeah.
And really what happened there in terms of the innovation came more from the rhythm section. So on the piano there are these big fourth voicings that were really following the solo, and the drums now, it was more of an Indian model, the way a tabla player follows a sitar player in Indian music. So he's not when you listen to Elvin, he's always playing time, but he's really dynamically free to be explosive and to create the peaks and valleys. Now remember, this happened at the same time as Hendrix, and to me Hendrix and Coltrane are really the same. They're going for the same thing using different tools and different styles of music, right? Instead of a blues rock beat and distortion, it's tenor saxophone, and they're using different kinds of tools to get there, but the concept is very similar, to where the bass is pretty much, most of the time modal. If you listen to a Love Supreme, it's not really going anywhere.
It's actually even simpler harmonically, a lot of the stuff that he did later.
There's nothing going on in the harmony. There's barely any chords. Or if there are chords over a pedal, like in My Favorite Things. There's it goes through the piano player is playing all the changes, but the bass is just holding one note through them. which creates this primal kind of feeling.
And it's also that you kind of stretch it out more. So Coltrane, like, did really long solos. It works better like that when the harmonic language is not that dense, if compared to just playing like 1,000 choruses of Stella by Starlight.
And the idea is, it's like this search. It's like looking for enlightenment. That's really like the vibe, and that's why this. It's like you just pray and pray and pray and pray, and then you see something. You
again,
get
before it was like this guy that like again Charlie Parker. It was like a guy that basically controls music, like again a virtuoso, like what can he do with saxophone. And this one was more like you go beyond the saxophone.
Well, this is something
that's really the failing.
This is something that I think is hard for people who come from modern soloing initially to appreciate about early swing and about bebop, which is, where's the peak? When does he get there? And it's like there's nowhere to get to. The second phrase of the solo and the last phrase of the solo are as built
same
dynamically.
Temperature, yeah.
They're the same. They keep it the same temperature. A Coltrane solo is not like that.
And you that's one of the things that's like you cannot come back from. It's like there is no jazz that's like that anymore.
Yeah.
Like even if you hear people trying to play swing now, they're still trying to build it in the same kind of way.
You know why? Because they made it like sex. It's like it has that kind of linear trajectory, which is like, you wiggle your thing a lot, and then, and there's a love explosion on your stomach. But yeah, it just all of a sudden has a climax, and that's hard to not go for as a soloist. I mean, it definitely influenced the way we play. Like,
even though we do it a little bit, but we do it a little bit differently.
We do, but because we have multiples.
But also it doesn't go to the same. But on our end, it doesn't go that high in some ways.
Well,
it's pretty intense.
Only when you have a drummer that touches you the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but it doesn't go that way. It's not true. It's like when we just met in 2007, we tried to go there.
Yeah.
But very quickly we didn't. Right?
Yeah.
So
the problem is like, especially like when you have like a break in the beginning of your solo and you just like go super hard and then there's nowhere to build. You blew your load.
Yeah, but but I'm saying that our music, you don't go to the like.
Right. Oh yeah. Well, there's the shrieky, squeaky place that saxophone players like to go to too. I mean, I've seen it at Berkeley. A lot of people influenced by Coltrane, they just basically.
But even with your solos, you don't go to a place where the music like collapses, like everybody's going like playing all the subdivision, just everything. We don't go.
It's still reined in. Yeah, it's not as out.
Not compared to other fusion, right? So our fusion is way more intense than any other fusion that's going on. But but I'm saying it's like it's combination.
So that's Coltrane, I think, in a nutshell.
So in the same time, what happened? A lot of people took. Well, I guess you want to talk about free jazz first or post-bop? Let's say free jazz, because post-bop leads more to what happens after.
Yeah.
So
free jazz is Ornette Coleman and his posse. And they came up, if we're back to the talk about jazz being like architecture, and that bebop is the interior decorating to change the walls, and then post-bop built a new house. Hardbop built a new house, and Coltrane also decided to build a new house. Ornette Coleman decided it's better to be homeless, and he's just pushing his cart.
To build out. Well,
he's like the guys in San Francisco, in Fresno.
For him, it was the rebellion for him was like
against structure.
When you have harmony that you solo on, right, and people start writing more complex harmony. It's like and especially if you have a lot of harmony and it goes fast, it's like it feels like you have only that many options to play. Right? You have one, like even in 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. If you trying to hit all the changes, it's like you're really limited in what you can do.
Of course.
And for him, it was like he loved the jazz groove and the swing, right? And the sound of a walking bass, but he was like, okay, I want more freedom in the sense that I want to take as much as I want to. I just want to play melodies that I'm hearing in my brain, and I don't want to adhere to what's going on. So that's what he did.
It's almost political, and it's very postmodern. That's really the idea, is that we have evolved to a place that we don't need the institutions of harmony to oppress us, because with all the good the argument's always everything's been tried. Mozart and Bach did everything, and they didn't do anything new with notes. And even the little bit they could do with the jazz groove has been done already. Let's find something outside of this oppressive institution. It's the tyranny of those equal temperament and the 12 notes. And when you listen to Lonely Lady or all that stuff, to me that's his best song. And it's really, it works. And it's totally improvised. I do think that the best parts of that solo is when he's just playing D minor blues. But there is a lot of power there, and there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of newness. I think that was really the selling point. It was so new for a minute.
He also plays a plastic saxophone. It's like, it's a little bit what grunge was in a sense, because he was like just sick of all this
produced hair metal.
Yeah, exactly. Like the jazz became this like Danny said, like this producing, but. Right. But just
it's too frou-frou all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And it's like, let's bring it back to something visceral, to something gutty. And, in jazz, that happened in the 90s again, too, with the grunge people, with a very similar energy. But I think something that, when you're listening to like A Shape of Jazz to Come, you can almost hear how into it they are. And I think that's something that really... That recording catches more than the music itself. Like everybody in the band is just into this new form. They're into this revolution.
Well, I used to play free jazz a little bit, again for fun with friends in high school. And
me too.
Yeah, and it is fun, but also you discover very quickly that the harmony, while, like Danny said, like while you, while the harmony is very limited. I like your metaphor with the house, because harmony is very limited, right? But every house is a little different than each other. But if you're in the woods, it's like another fucking tree. Just a million trees. And you're like,
yeah, and it's like it's like, oh, shit.
And a cheetah eats you.
Fucking mountain lions, didn't think about that.
Did you see the video of this mountain lion, by the way?
No.
A guy in Utah, I think close to where we were driving. Mm-hmm. He was jogging, and a mountain lion. He was jogging by cubs. He didn't know, and then the mom just followed him, like going something like, and he had 6 minutes, and he filmed it like a fucking idiot. It's like, and you cannot believe it's not dead at the end.
Wow.
And he's just walking backwards for 6.5 minutes. You're like,
I'm gonna crash down
and then, yeah. Well, it's like, if I make it or if I don't make it, this is going to get so many views.
I hope they find my phone.
It's like, dude, leave your fucking phone. It's like you're about to die.
Just fucking turn that into a knife and stab it.
Yeah, like put it in your pocket so we can just hear it.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe,
dude, this was intense.
Maybe mountain lions are repelled by iPhones. That mountain lion they just watch The Social Dilemma. It's like, oh, put that down. You're wasting your life.
It was not repelled by it.
Anyway, back to Ornette. It's the thing about harmony.
It's fine in the beginning, but it's limiting. It's
very
limiting.
If any of you have, we played with Paul Werdico's band, and he insisted we made an album where we came to the studio. We were both thought that we were in the new Pat Metheny group.
Should, okay.
No,
just say a little bit on it. I'm just saying because we need to talk about it.
We're that
needs like an hour.
We're going to talk about that experience. But okay, so to abbreviate that whole experience into something that we've noticed, which is when you're playing a free show, when there are no parts, no harmony, no nothing, you're just listening to each other and playing. There is one prison you can't escape, which is the prison of what you can physically do on the instrument.
The movements you know.
Yeah. And it's like, it can feel like you're really improvising. I'm not playing any pentatonic scale. I'm not thinking about the song. I'm just making sounds. But then you make those sounds again after maybe 40 minutes or 2 minutes if you don't have any vocabulary, or you can't think of anything new to do. And you notice that life is just not pure imagination.
Well,
and
a lot of things won't work. It's like you can't play a song. We tried to do that,
right?
And Paul immediately stopped us. He was like, "What is this shit?"
Yeah, you can't play a part because then everybody needs to know the parts that go with that part.
Yeah, or you can't play a song because it's like, okay, we're all playing, and you're playing a song on top of it. It's not meshing.
Here is the thing: and this is the deep issue. All great music was once thought up from nothing. So it is true that inside that realm of chaos that you wouldn't possibly, of noise, of you know of true mess, you can pull out bits that will create the new style. But if you attempt to swim only in that chaos and not bring anything back to order, then you're just making a mess, because there are infinity ways to make dissonant noise that sounds like nothing. Just stick your head out the window and listen to the street. If that's music, then there's no point in practicing or doing anything like that. Just make sound. So you need to go out there into that chaos and grab something and pull it back in. There is a place for that. But without harmony, it's almost like you are painting with shades of gray. And it doesn't really matter what you do, because we don't have a great way of discerning all these shades of gray. So what if you play, let's say, I don't know, some sort of 12-tone road that's made up of all 12 pitches in an order, and then you just change one? It's true, it's different. It sounds different. But does it sound as different as, let's say, a Dorian mode from a Phrygian mode? Like a Dorian mode that reminds you of So What, to a Phrygian mode that throws you to like some sort of, Arab tent and a camel in the middle of the desert, or Lydian that has like this pixie magic Steve Vai vibe, or whatever, like things in harmony have these colors that are they evolved because they have this visceral reaction in us. They trigger and elicit this psychological reaction that's deep and colorful, and it's about where human beings actually are, where we evolved to, and how we all, have kind of collectively created this meaning that we can't escape. I don't know if it's through media, through Hollywood, through Broadway, through evolution. It doesn't matter what, but the fact is, if you can see
I don't know.
it,
More, again, we did in classical music before.
sure,
So
but where did it come from? We don't know.
I'm saying we didn't have Hollywood.
No, I know, but there's a lot of things they didn't do in classical music that we do now,
Yeah.
right? So I'm saying that things do evolve. New tools come on the scene, but they just come slowly, and a lot of times you got to be honest if what the things you're doing, if they have any sort of meaning. The way outplaying evolved,
No, let's wait with outplaying, because outplaying is really a little bit after, right? Because it's not really related to Ornette Coleman. It's funny to say, but it's not.
So,
but there's something also important to understand, right? So styles, a lot of times in jazz, it's like this one guy would bring something, guy or woman. He's just, when one guy would bring something, and then a lot of people would be the parody of what he did, right? So swing is not just Louis Armstrong. Like, we have a lot of people that sound very silly, and there is no magic in what they're doing. It's just the same sounds and songs that are not as good, and it just, again, sounds like a parody on Louis Armstrong, and that's the smiling thing and trying to entertain over the top. But something that's not, again, it's not fun to listen to. It's kind of creepy. And when Charlie Parker came, and all the musicians learn how to play fast and to play a lot of notes, but they lost a lot of the articulation on the way, and they weren't as good rhythmically. And same thing with every style. Right? Like Coltrane, what he did with the intensity, a lot of musicians play against the groove, but they do it all the time in places that don't fit it, in music that doesn't fit it. And same thing with Ornette Coleman. Ornette Coleman was a very compelling artist and compelling saxophone player. But that just means that he had a lot of, it's like, again, like this guy that's
was great. He was
that's
great.
Bigger
at what he
than
did.
life and charismatic, and he's like, fuck your homes, let's camp, and everybody, let's train hop, let's go train hopping.
Right.
And then everybody's like, oh, I'm on a train, I'm dirty.
Right.
Just have a bunch of dirty punk hippies.
It's weird.
Following him.
Yeah. It's so simultaneously there's post-bop.
Yeah.
And post-bop, really, to me, the characteristic guy is Wayne Shorter.
Yeah.
Everything.
So they took harmony to another level of like dissonance, and it was a lot really based. Like, if I'm gonna go really into music, so if a Hardbop still had a lot of the major modes, really in some harmonic minor, and just a little bit of melodic minor. In Wayne Shorter music, it's a ton of melodic minor.
That's true, but to me, that's not the big indicator of post bop. The tool that Wayne Shorter used first, and everybody followed suit, and it's still the prevailing form of harmony today, is dysfunctional harmony. So the idea up till then,
Yeah, but
even
again, it's the thing that works on it is all the melodic minor.
sure,
all the
that's true.
melodic ladder,
That's true. It's but that's the stuff that you play on the chords. But I think it's important to understand harmonically the real difference between hard bop and post bop. So hard bop was really this kind of attempt at making a new kind of house that's a little more intricate. If you liken this to architecture, Wayne Shorter was just making these weird houses, right? Like,
Yeah.
and in terms of this, very modern, really modern. So the idea was there's still cadences. If you listen to like Fee Fi Fo Fum or songs like that, they still have a 5-1 motion or a sub 5
Yeah.
resolving like that. There's a lot of that, but there's also all of a sudden a lot of unrelated chords. Dominant chords that move to other dominant chords just by a strange interval, minor chords moving to minor chords, and it's kind of a mixture of that. So this conversation I started with Coltrane about Counterpoint, this is really the guy, Wayne Shorter is really the guy that took that and made ugly bass lines, ugly bass motion that's non-functional, just sounds like, almost would have a random sound to a lot of people in terms of the direction and the melodies that are created in the bass, to create something very beautiful and modern in the melody. He's a great melody writer. A lot of his melodies are very pretty, where you basically have a tone row in the bottom, but then you find notes on top that voice lead into each other very nicely, to where you can still use a lot of the same rhythmic tools that you would use to write a swing melody, but you would just kind of go to all these places that were not available before because of the constraints of tonal music, right? The corniness of an extremely consonant bass line like you would have in All of Me. Like if you think about All of Me, it's, you're really just playing super diatonically. The melody that you have in the bass is all in the C major scale. You're never leaving the C major scale, the whole song, right? Bum, bum, ba, 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 ba. That's like the A section.
Yeah.
And you write a melody on that, it's a prison, right? That's the same kind of prison. So really, if you're thinking about the 60s, which is what we're talking about, those three archetypes of people, which is like the modernist, which is, Wayne Shorter, the prophet, which is John Coltrane, and the homeless dude, which is, Ornette Coleman.
I actually want to say that Ornette Coleman should be the prophet, and Coltrane is more like the priest or something.
Yeah, the priest, right?
Yeah.
But those kind of archetypes that you have, what did they do? They all rebelled very hard against this constraints of jazz, right? The harmonic constraint was really something that Ornette Coleman abolished, and Wayne Shorter reharmonized, and John Coltrane simplified.
Yeah.
And they each found a different kind of freedom. That was the idea. Now, at the same time, you also had Miles Davis, who his whole thing was just to evolve music, right? To get the people who write the most
so Wayne
modern.
Shorter wrote a lot of songs for him. Yeah.
Right. So that's the way Miles Davis always stayed in the top of jazz, was to get people in his band and let the people write. And, whatever the next sound in jazz was, the people would just kind of ride into his music. Now, when you bridge the gap, and to me, the end of the 60s really, and the album that's really ends it all and sums it up with the disgusting mess that it turned out to be, as Bitches Brew, an unlistenable piece of shit. I just
Bitches Brew is already something different though, right?
Yeah.
So Bitches Brew is like a combination of avant-garde and basically rock music.
Or I shouldn't talk so much shit about it, but I really hate that album. I think I've tried listening to. How many times have you tried listening to that one?
A lot.
Could you ever survive it?
No.
It's terrible, right?
People love it somehow.
I don't know.
I don't get it.
It's like, I think you need to do some drugs we haven't done, which is another thing to talk about too. Drugs really influence music. Yeah. And it's like a lot of times, you have to be on something to appreciate it. I know it's certainly true with, a lot of kinds of music. So yeah, I pretty much only smoke weed a few times a year, drink a little bit, and that's it. So I think I don't have a palate for a lot of stuff like that. But yeah, Bitches Brew. People call that fusion. To me, I don't understand.
Bitches Brew like drinking piss?
That's what it feels like.
No, but is this what he meant?
I mean, if so, he's a genius.
Somebody plays MLS with their hands, so I'm not gonna Google it. I'm not gonna Google Bitches Brew. Bitches drinking piss.
Google like, did Miles Davis drink dog shit? Anyways, yeah, Bitches Brew. Yeah, I don't like it. But what happened there? Electric instruments. And that was a big revolution in jazz. That was really
is it Dave Holland playing bass?
Dave Holland and DeJohnette.
Okay.
And they have like Chick Corea and John McLaughlin and Keith Jarrett.
Yeah, we have everybody.
And, it's like basically everybody who would turn out to be famous the next decade played on that album. Zawinul, I think. Yeah.
Next 40 years.
Yeah, but that was the beginning of electric instruments in jazz, and Miles's new direction.
Keith Jarrett famously said that he hated it the most, and he hated playing anything other than piano, but he did it to save Miles for himself. What I said, he did it to be famous. He was like, Miles gonna pay me, give me a good check.
It was going to be okay.
Yeah,
his career was going to be.
Yeah,
fun.
but he hates it. I actually understand it, because sometimes, especially as a sideman, it can happen. But sometimes even, for me, like some stuff that I played, I was like, ugh. So it's like, oh, no, Danny made me do it. It's like, it's not my fault. Right. So basically that's what he was trying to say. But he really didn't like that music.
Next album, we have to play Iwi.
Yeah.
To save him for myself. Anyways, so yeah, then we get into fusion, and that's really where, Mahavishnu, Return to Forever, Weather Report, of course, where you get into this thing where all of a sudden it's a mixture of technologically advanced instruments, amps making it in, analog synthesizers with Zawinul.
And the Rockstar was born, so it was like...
yeah, and all of a sudden you had rock stars, and Jaco was really the first jazz rock star.
Yeah.
And also it mixed with the prog music of the day, and there was a generation ready to receive it, which was into music, like Zeppelin was big, and they were mixing the textures. I do think that since then, all of the innovations in playing only happened sonically, meaning people would only, and that's really a phenomenon.
Well, I actually disagree with that. So we can, because I told you, I think there's a big difference. So if you look at modern jazz, and it started really at the late 70s.
Let's talk about fusion first.
Okay, let's do fusion
70s
first.
fusion.
Okay.
So yeah, 70s fusion. It was, to me, listening to bands like Mahavishnu, it's a little bit still with the avant-garde. They have like this avant-garde vibe to them over rock grooves, but like it's very out for me. That's not a band I ever really got into. And mixing in, the fusion then was really fusion in the sense that they were trying to appropriate,
Yeah, it's like but to me, like that stuff is not. It's funny, yeah. It's a huge part of our music, but that's not what defines that style. Do you know what I mean?
They were bringing it into rock jazz, but like each band was doing it in a different way.
Yeah.
Like Chick Corea definitely had the Spanish thing with Spain, and like with all that, he was trying to bring something.
Well, we have a lot of Israeli stuff, but it's like I wouldn't say that it's just because that's who we are. So it's not the thing that defines the style necessarily.
Yeah, but if you look at like, Joe Zawinul Syndicate and Weather Report, like with the African kind of vibe and the Latin
Well, they were
songs.
bringing a lot of stuff, yeah, from all over the world,
Yeah,
basically.
I mean, it was this mixture of, it's not real
Well,
world music, but it's their impression of it.
I'm guessing that it would became just way more available, right? That
Yeah.
before that it was really hard to find.
I'm not saying it's sinister. I'm saying in the writing.
Oh
I
no,
think
no, I'm not saying
I-
sinister. I'm saying it's like probably technologically, all of a sudden you have all those
and
recordings
the
from different
textures.
countries.
He had synths. He could
Yeah.
like do something that kind of sounded like a lot of things. And I think compositionally, the idea was to really include these kind of, global visions into the music. Create this music that's drawing from everywhere in the world and blend maybe the jazz approach, the jazz freedom, jazz improvisation, with things that you would find, almost like a musicological edge. That mixed with the strange death of swing, that happened too. And that happened in the late 60s, which is the strange transition that almost all of jazz players went through, where the music was not subdivided to triplets anymore. It was straight. Like funk came about, disco came about, all this music came about, and all of a sudden everybody, instead of going like, we're going,
And also
Right.
we got so far away from
the straight
from where jazz was just like a couple decades ago, that for people that like Danny and me, it's like for us, it took us a while to understand that we don't play jazz, in the sense that, yeah, we improvise and we use the same tools, and we always look at our music as some kind of a weird, like we come from the bebop, Charlie Parker kind of school of music, with some details in the middle. But, the ideas, the big philosophy behind it is jazz philosophy, right? Our music and a lot of the fusion. But for people that listen, if you put it in the background, for somebody that is not aware,
They would not say it's jazz.
yeah, they would not say it's the same music. Like you would play them Charlie Parker, and Art Blakey and Coltrane, they can still see how it's related. But if you put Mahavishnu all of a sudden, you'd be like, this is not the same
This
music.
is rock. That's what they would say, because people are sensitive to texture and to color much more than to guiding philosophy and approach. And I think Bill Evans said it the best in that one interview, which in jazz, 1 minute of playing equals 1 minute of music. And that the music gets to live only for the time it's being played, because you're making choices in the moment and painting on time. And that's really the difference, like when we play African Chapter, even the day after day, for me, I'm always in the driver's seat with the chords, even to some extent with the melodies, choosing how to do it tonight, really manning the station and not trying to match a vision that I had when I wrote it.
Yeah, African Chapter now, when we play it once in a while, like still, we don't do it in a lot of shows, but sometimes we do like an encore or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different than how we played it on the record.
And the idea is to really man the station, be in that seat of consciousness, making decisions, not going to autopilot, and not having a game plan. I think that's the hardest thing for what I would say rock or prog musicians to accept about the nature of jazz, is that you can never be prepared ahead of time. You can never make a plan that will be better than the choices you're making in the moment, because there's too much, complexity in reality, and the whole aesthetic of the style is reacting to things as they happen and having the confidence and the vocabulary to just contend with whatever situation that emerges and trusting yourself to do it well.
Well, it's very weird. So if you go to a vacation, let's say, in a place you've never been before, there are two approaches. One approach is we're gonna plan every second of the day and make the most of it. Like we're gonna check online every place that we should see and all the sites, and go to Google every little like local secrets or whatever, and just do the most. That and have every second of every day plan. And then there is an opposite approach that says, well, the best things happen when you don't plan them, and we're just gonna walk around and see what happens and see where the vacation or the trip leads us. And it's different type of people.
Yeah. And then there's Ornette Coleman, who just takes a nap on the street.
Yeah, but the point is that it's like for a lot of musicians, and I think those musicians shouldn't be jazz musicians, but a lot of musicians, and sometimes it's folk musicians, classical musicians, and sometimes it's again jazz musicians that shouldn't be jazz musicians. They don't understand how it can be better to just come up with whatever it is on the spot and not to think about it.
They're automatically cynical against it because they're like, it sounds nice what you're saying, but like if you give me time at home, I'll come up with a nice part.
Yeah, like
that part will be better. But it's like, to me, I don't trust yesterday's me more than today's me.
Yeah, but that's also why I'm saying about the trip, because for the people that are the type of people that just would rather go on a trip that's not super planned, they know that super planned trips are a bummer.
Yeah,
right. It's
for them.
Yeah, for me too. Like I would not be able to do it. I hate having a schedule like that. Right. I cannot deal with it, and it's
me neither.
So so to me, it's like the fun part.
People, when we go on the road, if we have like a new band member, people usually have a shot, like
where do we sleep? Where do we go?
Yeah,
it's like I don't know.
I'll decide.
I'll decide.
Like,
I'll tell you.
Finish the show. I'm gonna go on my phone, find a hotel.
I'll always tell the person, don't worry, I'm gonna tell you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you when it's time to do something. You're gonna know.
Because like, and if they kind of push, it's like, just stop being a bummer. Just stop it. You're being a bitch.
Like when are we gonna? When are we eating? What are we eating? It's like, are you hungry? Go eat.
Yeah.
It's like we're gonna.
Life can be very simple if you just trust yourself. To make good choices. And I think that to me that's really what really stayed with jazz. It's the approach, it's the philosophy, it's the attitude, but not so much the tonal and rhythmic.
Yeah, infusion. That's what happened
choices.
in fusion.
Yeah, and fusion really. I think by the end or mid '70s. So the phenomena that did happen is, first of all, you had rock stars, and in terms of a business model, now you needed to make a rock star. And
now it's not enough to make $100,000.
Right. You needed to make a bass hero, a guitar hero, a drum hero, and that's what Pat Metheny, when you watch him with the long hair in the '80s,
or Brecker, it was like
Brecker,
the idea,
and the pirate pants.
Yeah.
Or even Scott Henderson to some extent with the calculator,
for
watching guitar
sure,
player,
Scott Henderson, yeah.
Magazine, and
wasn't he like
Holdsworth,
one of those people on the cover of Guitar Magazine?
And later on, not in jazz, but with rock, it really went crazy. Because they elevated people to such a level that they were never before. But yeah,
which is crazy because again, at the end of the day, it's just a dude playing notes in time. So it's
silly.
It's like the Eddie Van Halen thing with was it Beat It? Which song was it?
Yeah, Beat It, when Michael Jackson.
Yeah, gave him like $1 million to just to noodle on like over a few measures, right? Yeah. And it's like it's not a dig on Eddie Van Halen, but I'm saying there is no. It's like you have a few measures to play a guitar solo.
There's no justification.
For $1 million, there is no such thing.
Yeah, I don't know if it's $1 million, but it was a lot of money.
Yeah, whatever it was, right?
Whatever it was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
$1 million. It's like, what's the name of this?
Mini-Me.
Yeah.
Dr. Evil.
$1 million.
That's not a lot of money anymore. $1 billion. Like, that's not a lot of money anymore. The government prints that in a second.
Yeah.
All right. So we're at the end of the 70s. And you have Brecker Brothers out. You have this.
Everybody. There was a huge rebellion against that because people were like, "This is not jazz. We don't like it anymore." Also, like everything we liked about jazz, you took out of the music.
And the transition into the '80s too. You had these dumb motherfuckers playing with mixing pop into it.
Well, smooth jazz and like all the beats and all. Did you know that Kenny Garrett has smooth jazz albums?
No.
Strange. Did you ever hear him like sing or rap?
No.
Oh my God.
We're gonna have fun later.
Yeah, I'm gonna show you later.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, smooth jazz came in, and again, we obviously are not we're not covering everything that happened in jazz, like every little style and every little person. But just general.
Well, these are the big movements as we see them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the transition into the '80s. There started to just be so much money in it, and it was just driving everything to the mainstream. People just this thing of like records were lucrative, and then once they started having like compact discs, which I'm guessing what is mid 80s, late 80s,
Yeah.
something like that,
I
early
heard,
90s. I don't
yeah,
know.
I had a story from somebody that played with Breaker that his management forced him to put on a,
Pirate pants.
no, not just pirate pants.
Oh, a mic, the clip-on mic.
Clip-on mic, so,
So
he
he
can
can
dance
dance.
more. And it's like,
And the guy was like, yeah, he was like a master at playing with a mic on a stand, which is a craft, you know, like
Yeah.
you could swell, you can do all these things. And all of a sudden that whole side of his musical character
and
was
it's like,
gone.
no, because people need to see you move.
Yeah, they need to see you dance. It's like, dude, if you go to a show to see Michael Brecker
Michael
dance,
dance.
you're an idiot.
Yeah, but the people that manage him, it's like, you know the type,
Right.
you know the thing.
Yeah, I do. Unfortunately, I do. There was something, I think, in the 70s, it was very pure about fusion, like some sort of attitude of killing that was still remained intact from Coltrane. You know, they were looking for the peak. They were looking to crush the solo, like just to leave you headless at the end of it with a face melted straight off. And in the 80s, they started taming that back. They were trying to really make these nice little songs, you know, with like pockets. It was like pop, and that hair metal vibe was seeping into everything in jazz. And then it was just the synth game, and
There is a thing about
created an allergy.
well, there is
that
a
I
thing
still
about
have.
there is a thing about people, like, if you're a saxophone player in the 80s and you see Kenny G making like billions of dollars or whatever he made, like,
Millions,
like
yeah.
$200 million, right? Not
Right.
billions, but like,
Yeah, a lot of money.
yeah, like making like, he's
Like
a
an NBA player,
multi-millionaire. Like, he has like a $70 million in the bank sign. You're like, oh, that's what people like.
Yeah.
I'm gonna incorporate it. And when a lot of the saxophone players were over, including Brecker, really put a lot of smooth jazz in their playing.
Yep.
And it's really weird.
I'm not sure if Kenny G was the engine for that.
I'm not sure if Kenny G was the
Yeah.
engine for it, but I'm saying it's like this. I'm saying reality affects you, and you see it
Yeah.
with bands all the time that they lose their center in a sense that, like, oh, this band, does like crowd work, and everybody fucking loves it. We can do a little bit of crowd work,
Right.
Like
We
this,
can dress
like,
up.
We can dress up. You're like, yeah,
Right.
that doesn't take anything away from us, but it does take away from you because you don't go to.
You make one compromise and it's addictive. That's
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, we're already dancing. Why don't we just put like sweat? People like when people have headbands on. It's like, oh, like why don't we do fun socks?
What we wanted to do is I learned how to juggle 3 balls in a parking lot before a show in, where were we? Where is Eastman? Rochester.
Rochester,
In
yeah.
Rochester. And and I was like, I should just, because everybody always complained
That you don't do anything.
that I
You're
don't, that I just
practicing
stand
juggling when I
there.
solo.
So it's like I just juggle and Danny solos.
Yeah, yeah.
And
No,
everybody's like, look at this guy.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard because it's like because you're like at the beginning you're like, I'm not a clown, but then you're like, why don't we just put a clown nose on? And then it's like, well, I already have a clown nose.
Tin,
What
tin,
about-
tin, 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 tin.
Yeah,
Why won't you
what
do a
about some
section
makeup?
when everybody is playing tin, 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 and I'm just fucking going at it. But we'll do it cool, like tin, tin, kush, tin, 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 kush, tin, brrrr, dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, and before you know
And
it,
then
your-
Danny
your-
does a split.
before you know it, your music is a piece of shit, and you're a Vegas.
Well,
show.
and the people that actually like you are like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah,
That's
and-
not what
and-
I came
and
to
the
say.
people that don't, the people that like you because of what you're doing, like a million other people that do.
Yeah, they're not
Cla-
really attracted to it. That's the thing. It's
Yeah.
like people are not, you don't fool the people. You can't fool everybody.
The problem is that musicians are deeply have a deep lack of confidence, almost all of them. And initially, when you're standing on a stage, you're really using your eyes to read the room and see how much fun people are having and how engaging you are as a person and as an act and how powerful your musical ability is to kind of command the room. And when you do that, if you read the two people dancing as the ones that are having fun, having a great time, and the people sitting looking at you as like, oh my God,
Because if you see somebody
slow
dancing,
energy.
like, oh, I know I'm doing it right because we're dancing.
Right. But most of the time, that girl dancing, the hot girl dancing, she just wants people to look at her.
And she came to dance.
And she came to dance, and she would have done it for any act. But the people, like for me, if you put me in a show that I'm having the greatest time in, I probably look like I'm suffering. And I know it's true for a lot of my audience. You know, it's like they just sit there with this blank expression, usually arms crossed, and they take it in. And it's just having the humility to understand that you sometimes don't know the truth from observing. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And in those kind of situations, a lot of times you just don't. And you should just trust yourself. Ask yourself, is this good? Do I like this music?
Yeah, and
make the music you
know,
like.
and music just if not, you're just doing again. You're doing a parody. Because if I don't dance, so if I try to do music for dancing, it's like what am I going for? You know, and we see a lot of musicians like you know, like doing I can name so many, but making an album with a single all of a sudden, right? Like a jam bandy, like fusion musician or jazz musician, doing like a jammy like album with a singer, and was thinking, and I know because they told me that, or the managers told me that oh yeah, it's like, you know, you sneak in the great music.
Right.
It's like the people won't notice, will be so busy like jamming. Hey, here's the funk. Get the funk. And you know, it never fucking works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's crazy. It's like saying like you're a great fucking cook. You make the best steak. Like cut up a little piece and put it in a McNugget. People are gonna love it. It's like then they're gonna be like, what was in the middle of that McNugget? Where's your restaurant? Does that cost what, like $80? All right. It's like, no, that's a ridiculous idea.
Yeah.
You know, people need to know what they're in for. You need to actually build your audience that's there to see what you do. Now, let's talk about the set. So
yeah,
to me,
it's already long. So let's
no. We can talk. We can do long. Long is good. When we're talking about the transition between the 70s and the 80s, we're also talking about the beginning of the strange death of jazz as jazz in the free market, and the beginning of the non-for-profit stepping in. And to me, a lot of people asked us to talk about like the Marsalis Syndicate, and you know, like the mafia.
We have a mafia, exactly,
and you know, the jazz mafia, and all this shit. And once you start having public money, once you start having this idea that you need to preserve jazz,
it's also the schools were like, because before that you had a few schools, right? And they didn't really teach jazz. Like Juilliard don't teaches jazz, I think,
that
barely.
Harmony, yeah.
Right? Taught harmony or stuff, and then all of a sudden you have like 10 million jazz schools. It's like you have.
Right. There was money. They turned education into a business, and then the idea was that, I think probably started from a good place. Started from, man, these kids are playing weird music. Let's preserve jazz. And then you had these people that were just getting grants and applying for grants and getting millions of dollars to preserve it. And then, you know, they would build them at CSO, like, you know, at symphony orchestra halls and soft ticket shows. And once you start creating that, once the audience doesn't vote with $10 a ticket or $20 a ticket.
You know what's crazy about it is that I love Cannonball, and I was just going through his discography just to make sure I didn't miss anything. And I heard this album. It's a live album in San Diego called Lighthouse. Mm-hmm. And it's called Lighthouse because it plays there in the Lighthouse Cafe. Okay? And it's a great album. And
there's like 10 people
in
the audience. It's like
10 people. Like when the songs end, it's like.
Right.
Yeah. And I was like, that's Cannonball Adderley.
There's nobody there.
In his prime. It's like, you know, so it's like Cannonball Adderley in his prime playing in the Lighthouse Cafe. And then somebody like playing like a Cannonball imitation, like, you know, like whatever.
10 years later, Carnegie Hall.
Yeah, this dude playing Cannonball is playing for like 5,000 people.
Yeah, well, I'm not against big audiences. I think success is great. Weather Report literally played stadiums.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I'm just saying it's weird.
Yeah, but this thing that started happening where the engine shifted from a rock music kind of engine, which is let's have promoters, have big shows, sell tickets, sell lots of tickets, sell lots of albums, to what started happening with, you know, the, what do you call that, the Lincoln Center, where you have like these government-funded, city-funded institutions or
Can actually-
oligarchies. Like
Actually,
where-
before we get into Danny, can I just
Yeah.
talk about just the last thing that I think happened really with jazz that kind of, and then we can talk more about like the business.
Go for it.
Yeah. So after the fusion, there was a huge rebellion against it, right? Because again, it wasn't jazz for a lot
I
of
think
people came
we
up.
we didn't talk about the synthesizers. I think
Oh,
it
you
was
wanna see-
mainly the texture of the digital, the DX7s, the Yamaha synthesizer, all that shit. It was such a bad choice. It was so cocaine driven that like people with the Hawaiian fucking t-shirts and the calculator watches and you know, like what they call it, like perms,
Yeah.
dudes like, you know, doing all that shit, playing with like loud digital synthesizer string patches. Everybody just was like, you know, it's like everybody wanted to eat it, but that got the fucking shit. You know, it was like
Yeah.
poison.
Yeah, it is poison.
It's like
It's musical poison.
yeah,
it
it's
is.
musical poison. You just you ingest it and then like you're sick for like 3 decades, and we're still coming out of it. It's like
So the last thing that really happened to me, and again, I know there is some differences. I don't want to feel like getting into it. The biggest difference that happened with people like Pat Metheny and Brecker in their jazz career, right, not their fusion stuff, is that they stopped playing. They started playing instead of like functional. Basically, they played over functional harmony, and actually they played a lot of them on stuff that's simpler harmonically, because you know we saw from all the rock and all
Not
the pop,
only, but
how
that too.
yeah, but like triads. They start having triads again in music because it has so much power. But they really play out in the sense like super dissonance to super consonance.
I think what they did was that they treated the cadence, the phenomena of a cadence, like a motion of a 5-to-1, as compartments in time. And the compartment in time that was responsible for the dissonance could be whatever you want it to be, as long as it moves towards the consonants.
Yeah,
And
as
if
long
you
as
have
it
a measure
resolves.
of a 5 chord and a measure of a 1 chord, you need to get to the 1, and there you need to play super inside.
Like super inside means like stuff that will be two inside
major,
in bebop.
major
like,
pentatonic, triads,
Exactly.
something that's like super consonant. But on the dissonant part, you can do Coltrane substitutions. You can make up your own chain of chords. You can play chromatic, like atonal patterns, like 12-tone stuff. And that's really the sound of like 90s modern jazz.
Yeah, from avant-garde to smooth jazz in a few
it's,
measures.
It's a weird combination of like avant-garde and smooth jazz. I would agree with that. Or late Coltrane avant-garde.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Not
Late-
ornette. Like
late Coltrane.
late
avant-garde.
Coltrane
Yeah.
to smooth jazz. That's really the vocabulary. We can go on to talk about but this was all still done with people who were making lots of albums in the 80s, so everything was super produced. Everything was polished, recorded in the nicest studios, best musicians around, technical, fast. And then in the late 90s, early 2000s was the hipsters. They started rebelling against that, like the early hipsters. They weren't hipsters
but
yet.
harmonically, they still, like, again, a lot of them were trying to do like more like hey, I'm gonna do Radiohead songs, but
Right.
but harmonically, it's like from like it's all about the dissonance resolution.
Right. But Brad Mehldau, Kurt Rosenwinkel, that whole gang of people of New York in the late 90s, early 2000s. And yeah, there was the whole Bad Plus kind of movement where they took, and Mehldau, where they took newer songs and were like, let's make new standards, man. But you can't really do that because there's a degradational thing that happens every generation. So when harmony degrades over the 50s and you get the Beatles, they're still drawing from, they have classical music in their ear, they have big band swing, and there's still a richness to their writing that is kind of, transformed somewhat, but what they passed on to the next generation, like of the 80s, and people who were coming up in the 80s writing songs, people, and especially the 90s, like Kurt Cobain, people then were writing music that was so basic harmonically that there was just not so much to do with it if you're trying to use it as vessels for harmonic improvisation.
Yeah.
And when you see bands like Bad Plus, the way they work around it is by just really avant-garding it, like doing a lot of stuff that's super like out there with the drum, with the prepared piano textures, like dynamically kind of going nuts.
And again, and you have to play really out, because if not, there is just not enough material harmonically. So it's like you have to go very extreme. You can't just play you can't play the song. You have to play like.
To me, the real problem of the late 90s, early 2000s jazz, which is really the last, after that there is no other generation. It skipped a generation. Nobody did anything notable in terms of transforming the style. Maybe some people would argue.
Those people, and people today too, the thing that they take from Coltrane, and this is the thing that drives me nuts listening to it. Like I hear modern saxophone players, and I hear all of them. So don't ask me if I know somebody. I know everybody, and and everything they did. So it's like they play like. It can be like when they're trying to do the fusion thing, which a lot of people try to do now.
Yeah, one album. But
they
don't want to call it fusion. It's like, like blah, 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 like groove band.
Yeah, but
whenever you hear the word groove band, somebody wanted to put out a fusion record, but was afraid of calling it fusion.
But if they play if you see it, especially when we play fusion and ballads, that they don't play the subdivision of the song. Like the tu-ka, tu-ka. So the subdivision of this groove is right, and they don't play it once in the solo, and it's like, oh my God, can this person play in the groove for a second? Or a ballad like never play that subdivisions. It's like, why won't you play the song?
Yeah. They don't.
It drives me nuts. I cannot listen to that stuff.
What I was going to say about that generation is, there was...
Fuck them.
Fuck them hard. Seriously. You know who you are. But what I'm saying is that there was no evolution in terms of rhythm or harmony. And that's really a shame. That's
what I was saying about the... To me, it's like the Pen Metheny breaker
was the last new thing.
Yeah. So but it's like they think they do different stuff, but but it's the same thing.
Can I bring up my boy, Jacob?
Oh,
I have to talk about Jacob.
But that's not jazz.
No, I don't know what it is. But yesterday I was listening to some Jacob, because I talked so much shit about Jacob Collier, not so much, but the previous podcast.
I stopped you.
You stopped me. So I was realizing, I should listen to it. 'Cause my dad always told me that if you hate something, it's because you see it in yourself. And I was like, and I think that's true, because he has this energy that's like, look at me, I am a genius, It's like,
I am not like you.
Yeah, I'm not like you. I come from a better place.
Hey everybody.
So, hey everybody. I am a cunt. No, but yeah. So, but it's that I have that too. I want people to appreciate me
As a
unique being, exactly. And I see it in him, and I hate it because I feel like that's disgusting. But it's true. I had like a moment of confronting this demon that's inside me through this this character. But the kind of stuff he talks about, because I was doing some digging, and it's like he plays like it's like, listen to this chord. It's like a megabass chord, and it's like there's 12 notes in the chord, and it's like a C on an E on a D, like 4 chords, and then it's like, but all you have to do is resolve every note, and it's like weird, and then it's like makes sense.
We taught over 100 clinics, Dani and I. Oh, okay. Dani and I taught over 100 clinics, mostly in colleges.
Yeah.
And some high schools and guitar stores or whatever, but mostly in colleges. And we have so much confidence when we talk about music. I told Dani, and the people were so convinced for the time that we were there.
Yeah.
And we should be convinced, because we're saying...
But we could say anything.
It's like it feels sometimes like we're just hypnotizing them, and we can say anything.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens with him, I feel like.
Well, the stuff he was talking about, though, he was talking about like how he was showing how like he sings a G to an E, and then he breaks it up singing into as many pieces as he wants, like microtonally, just intonation. And it's like do 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 do, like whatever. Like just whatever. And I'm just looking.
Yeah, because there are infinite amount of sense, basically.
The amount of people who are trying to break up G to E right now into equal pieces that can't play a fucking blues lick, that don't understand the most fundamental things about sounding good. And it's just like I understand he makes like his music. I'm not even going to address his music. I personally don't like it. I think I've heard enough to know that it's not for me, you know. But if you do like it, that's fine. I don't care what you like. You shouldn't care what I like. But I will say that I feel like he is doing a disservice to people by attempting to just be perceived as a genius. Like a guy like him is not, when you're in a situation where you're not free to play a blues lick that sounds good on a minor chord, you're not free to do it. You can't. You are expected to do something exceptional. And if you're doing something understated, it has to have this air where it's clear that you're understating.
Well,
you know?
I would say this. When we, both of us, when we explain our music to people, and it's not even our music, it's like our playing and how we think to people, we show them the tools that we use, and we show them the tools that they can use to make their own music, right? And I feel like with him a lot of times, it's more like he's focusing on the magic that his music, you know, the magical place that his music comes from. Because I'm not like, listen, I can also play for people like when you play like some stuff that we wrote, right? It's like, listen how intense, I don't know what song we do, like I don't know, like what's the name of it? Old Ways, right? It's like, listen how it opens up, like the first part in the bridge, right? And it's like amazing how this chord goes there, and you can explain the motion. Or like the second part, you can be like, listen how intense it is when you go, like it's like sharp 9, flat 9, and you start on the 5,
like
and then it opens up, and you have like the motion. Well, it's what I like about the music, right? It's really how I felt about the music. So it's my emotional. So I feel like a lot of times he's giving people the emotional reaction he has to his own music.
It's
right?
so weird.
Which is what, you know.
Because for me, I'd just be like, that's a G7 moving to a C minor.
Yeah, well, but you do have an emotional.
A flat G.
Like, you know, I was like, oh, look here how I do the.
Yeah, but
like
I wouldn't,
in the bridge, I have
verbalize it and take people on that trip.
And exactly, that's what I'm saying. It's like I have this music that's, you know, it talks for itself, and I'm not giving you my emotional feeling of it. I'm giving you the, you know, like I'll say this. I have an album coming out. It's going to come under Marbin. It's basically going to be like the second half. Danny did the solo guitar, and I did a jazz album.
Right.
And there's a part there that, you know, it's not my favorite part of the album, but there's a part there that I love, like just in the second song, in the solo, right? When I was like, whatever it is, it's like, it's exactly what I like. Yeah. Everything clicks well. But I would never explain it emotionally because it's not very clear.
Because how it's dark and then it opens up.
Yeah, and it's like the way
brightness.
The sound goes from the like top saxophone to the bottom, and it's like there is this different one, basically
in a room
like
full of smoke
in head voice.
And then the window gets open and it's less smoky.
Yeah, it's like it's not the tool that I use to create music, right? It's so I feel like that's for him. That's just what he does a lot of times.
No, but what I'm particularly referring to is the idea. This is what he does. It's always the same setup. It's always the same. He frames it always in the same way, which I find personally not only triggering but irresponsible, because he's leading people to an empty place, to a place where the only thing that exists is 17 of you in split screen singing, harmonies. It's not towards life and culture and music. You know, it's like Leonard Cohen has this album, New Skin for an Old Ceremony. And I feel like that's what music is, right? Yeah. There is something social about it. We keep uncovering it. It's, somebody who should remain nameless said it's rescuing your father from the belly of the whale. And there is that element to music.
It's continuation. It's continuation.
It's creating lineage. And what he does, he says, like, all that stuff is great. And then he like plays like a 2-5-1, blah, blah, blah. I love that stuff. Like, you know, and he's not showing that stuff. He's not showing the harmony. He's just addressing it like a small thing that happened that he mastered, you know, even though basically. Like, I don't know, what's your favorite Jacob Collier swing album? Yeah. Right? He never, it's like, I'm sure he can play some stuff, but it's like he never did anything that matters in that. All he does is gives you little tastes of it to where you can imagine it's
like
you should hear him
yeah,
play
you
bebop.
can you can imagine the infinite potential.
Right, and that's that trick of being like, you know, of pretending to be, or, you know, again, he can do a lot of stuff. I'm not saying this guy doesn't have skill.
It's childish.
Yeah, there's a childish energy there, and there's the look at me, I'm a genius thing, but then he's talking about the microtonal thing, or like that negative harmony. Negative harmony only sounds good in Never Neverland, in the Upside Down. You know, that's you can quote me on that. But, and then sells it really hard and leads people to a place where they waste infinite amounts of time practicing stuff that is just, I guess, this is from where I'm coming from. In my estimation, nothing.
Yeah.
You know, it's
well,
just
it's not
usable over songs.
It's
and
not
it's
a
like
tool.
The game is to write good songs and to play over them. And everybody who disagrees with the goal of the game, I have a deep disagreement.
Yeah, I would say this: when we give people tools, it's usually something like, here's a hammer, right? It's not the only tool you're gonna need. But no matter what you do, you're going to need a hammer.
And he's like, hammers are nice, but what about magically enchanted swords?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's nice in your fantasy world, but what are you doing with them?
Well, it's fine if you're LARPing, but that's the only thing it's good for, right? Yeah. So it's like and you can't present it like it's equal. Like, look, here I'm using my sword.
Right.
It's like, yeah, some people use a hammer, some people use a sword. It's all music theory is, and all the stuff we always try to explain, it's always tools.
Yeah, it's always tools.
And you want to get the tools that help you get as many jobs that you want to get done.
Right. It's a tool for a job, and you gotta agree on what the job is. Now, if you love his music, I mean, he's probably an authority on making music similar to his, but to me, I don't know. To me, it doesn't speak to me. My biggest beef is Precious Boy energy. Precious boy energy.
Because you're also a little precious, that's what you're saying?
I think inside I'm a little precious, but I've worked against it. You know, I've seen the gay demon, and I've looked him in the eye, and I turned around. You know,
not there's anything wrong with it, but
that meant happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Me too.
Yeah.
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 Oh yeah.
There's
something to say
can
about
Jacob. Can you define?
I will, but there's something to say about Jacob, right? And all those people. That Jacob is better than almost everybody on
all the instruments.
All the instruments he plays, right? So this is something that's important to understand. It's not
we don't talk about people who are just terrible.
Yeah, there is no reason to talk about it. Like, if people say stuff about us, it's only because we represent something they don't like.
I'm okay with that.
You know,
and
it's fine. We do represent stuff that people don't like.
Yeah.
You know. By the way, where jazz evolved to the end, to its pinnacle, is nice harmonies, transition in playing, shredding with saxophone and guitar.
Playing a lot of unison lines.
Unison lines but also harmony sometimes, and just like inventing walls of music.
And they shredded happily ever after at the end.
The history of music. So,
can you define precious boy energy? What is a precious boy?
Well, did I come up with it? I feel like I did.
You did. It's really your biggest contribution to humanity.
No, it's not. I have a lot of them. It's this one and the instruments by.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do that next episode probably.
But Precious Boy.
Precious. Can I give it a small definition?
Yeah.
I think that when you have an audience in front of you, you close your eyes, and tattooed on the inside of your eyelids is your mom.
Your mommy.
And that's who you're really playing for. It's like...
It's an old guy that says, Daddy.
Daddy. It's
like, old woman actually too.
Yes, Jacob. Did you like that harmony? It is negative.
Like
it is so pretty,
my sister-in-law.
Jacob. Thank you. You are such a genius, Jacob.
My sister-in-law still calls her dad Daddy, and my wife always makes fun of her. It's like, you're a doctor. Don't call him Daddy. You're supposed to be a serious man, not a little child.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah, there's something it's hard to see because, I love my mom a lot. And I'm always happy to hear what she has to say. But
you love your mom, but not your mommy.
I love exactly that. I love my mom, but not my mommy. And I also, we have evolved our relationship into a sort of adult kind of thing. and this thing of just wanting to play for the accolades, being so clearly addicted to, like, it's like you're such a genius. And it's like, oh, am I don't know. I'm so eccentric, and it's just like I'm allergic to that, because I see. It's like seeing a fucking video of yourself at like 11 when you're just acting so gross, and it's just like, oh, there's just something in it that for me, that reflects something revolting. So that's why I talk about it.
There's the other side of it that also goes, which is a lot of. So that's kind of like not like being not aware, like as a child, again, like as a precious being, like being. Like you're a little.
Celebrate me, please.
Yeah, like you're Tinkerbell, right? It's like you're this delicate genius that you have to let that you have to clap for them, so they can they won't die, right? That's what Tinkerbell does. You have to clap for her, or she dies, right? So like delicate flower, that's kind of energy. But on the other side of it, which is one thing I fucking hate about modern jazz and modern art, is the self-awareness. Like they're only doing stuff like as half a joke, like I play fusion, and then they're doing like the stuff that they love, like with synths and stuff, because they love like Breaker Brothers, they love like Weather Report, but they can't really commit to it, so they're like doing it as a half a joke. It's like I hate it. It's like you don't take yourself too seriously, but take your fucking music seriously. Don't be a joke. I hate the people that make music into a joke because they can't commit.
It's like that
idiot.
Clowning is only when you can't play nothing.
No, but some of them can't play. You see, that's the problem. They can play, but they can't commit. They're too afraid to put themselves out there, being like, this is me. This is what I think about music. This is what I like. So they have to have all those inside jokes, like this idiot that did like the 1,000 miles, like 1,000 giant steps or whatever. He did it like in giant, like I would walk 1,000 miles. Like that song, he did it in giant steps changes, and he was wearing a dress and was like mimicking the video clip. It's like, dude, you're an idiot.
Right.
It's like, this is not attractive.
No.
Not to, like nobody wants to fuck it. It's like nobody likes it. Nobody wants to see it. And it's like, yeah, everybody's sharing it. Right? But it's like the joke is on you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know.
And it's like a lot of those things. It's like I just don't, or like the, and again, some of them are good musicians, like what's the name? Fruity Loops. What's the name of this?
Dirty Loops.
Dirty Loops. So, right, they're killer at everything they're doing. And the bass player, you see this guy, like, how is he going to play? And it's like, Jesus, this guy shreds, right? Yeah. So it's like, great musicians, why are you playing Justin Bieber song? It's like, you don't like Justin Bieber. Why are you doing it?
Because it was like, haha, we'll do it and we'll shred. And then you have to just fucking play Baby Oh for like 20 years.
Yeah, but it's like, you want to hide it, right? That's much better than another thing. And again, I'm not, that's what I'm saying. I don't have anything personal against these people. Like a lot of these people, they're probably not going to want to work with me if they see it. I remember that Alan Holdsworth.
By the way, we're putting it out there. If anybody wants to work with us, we will apologize. Let's do it. Yeah. We'll come up to you. We'll say, I'm so sorry.
Tell Jacob,
shouldn't have done it.
Tell Jacob we want to work with him.
Yeah, we want to work with him.
Again, he can play. He's good.
Yeah, you're good.
You can play with dirty love guy. Yeah,
but still. It's okay. We can still be friends now that we have.
I'll make a man out of you. I'll make a man out of you. That's from Mulan. Everybody, I've seen it with my baby, so I know.
But I'll make a man out of you.
Yeah. Anyway, so what I was saying? Oh yeah, the dirty loops. Yeah. So it's like I
the problem.
I don't like it. Commit to what you're doing.
Well, they are committed, but the problem is that they told a bad joke and now they're trapped in it for their entire career.
And sometimes we did some stuff that didn't land. We did some stuff that didn't work, and some stuff also worked. Just didn't work on the record.
It's also sometimes time to let something that works go. Like, we had to play we played Redline because we felt we had to for a long time. And that's what? Fuck it. Why? It's like, like when people are like, why don't you play Redline? It's like,
because we don't want to anymore.
Fuck you. Because I don't work for you.
Yeah. I do technically, but
not
technically.
No, I work and you pay to see whatever it is, and if you're so disappointed that we didn't play Redline, don't come again. But it's like, I would be sad. I want you to come again.
But we did Redline a million times. Enough.
Yeah, enough is enough. Because as a musician, you got to play the long game, and you got to give people what they need, not what they think you want. Not what you think they want. Yeah, they don't know what they want.
Yeah, we know what's, yeah.
I mean, it's like,
we made red line, we make something.
yeah, we'll make
instead of red
something
line.
better. Anyway, so last thing I want to talk about, because we brushed over it and I think it's important. What do you think happens when you stop having ticket sales, hard ticket sales, and start having
did go to that,
NGOs? What happened with the Marsalises? What happened?
Are you sure we
with,
shouldn't talk about it in like the next episode and just go really into all that stuff and music business and everything? Let's do that.
I think that's a good idea. Let's call it for now.
That's gonna be a teaser.
Yeah, we're teasing you.
It's a cliffhanger.
It's a to be continued.
Taking on the map.
All right. So places to check. First of all, please subscribe to this podcast. That's the way.
It's
to
usually
show love.
us more hanging out. This one was intense. This was intense. Like, I think for a lot of people it's gonna be too much, just because it's if you're not a musician.
Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe they will.
Let us know.
Yeah,
let us know what you think.
Feedback is always good. Marbinmusic@gmail.com is where you write us.
Or comment. We look at comments
anywhere. We look.
It's new. It's new. So we're obsessed
excited
with it. Yeah.
So another place to buy our music is marbinmusic.bandcamp.com and Facebook
There's
music.
even a free album though.
.com/Marbin
How funny it is to give a free sample of music when it's like you have Spotify.
It's very silly. I don't know. It's like, who downloads? I don't even know.
The people that I love.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
I really like you
Download
if you do it.
Yeah. So, okay. See you guys next time.
Maybe if you don't have enough like 4G or something, like if you don't have enough data in your plan, you know what I mean? Do some people
get pure?
I always say it, but we have like plans with no data. Right, and my wife told me like, "Oh, we can just get like 2 Gs." I was like, 2 Gs? You use your map to go. Like 40 feet, and you're out of it. Right? It's like,
yeah, it's nothing. All right.